The story begins by revealing that Gray had become the most powerful king in the world. However, without warning, his life comes to an end, and he is reborn in a medieval world. As soon as he opens his eyes, still a baby, he sees two smiling faces, his new parents. Their eyes overflow with affection and happiness. Both comment on how the newborn son resembles them and don't hide their excitement about the arrival of little Arthur. Reynolds, the father, immediately decides to name him Arthur and tries to get the baby to call him Daddy. Alice, the mother, laughs but reminds her husband that the boy is still too young for that. While the two play with their son, Arthur watches them with suspicion. He doesn't understand who these people are or why they are so sure they're his parents. If what they say is true, it means he really died and is now living another life, but with all the memories from the previous one. Lying down, he tries to accept that, even after winning countless battles and conquering everything, he now finds himself trapped in a fragile and incapable body. This situation makes him extremely uncomfortable, especially when he needs to do something so simple and at the same time so embarrassing, like burping. Despite this, Arthur doesn't feel angry about the life he has now. His new parents take care of him with dedication, but even so, he doesn't feel completely well. He doesn't like the idea of wearing diapers and lives with a constant feeling that he might be in danger. His only instinct for defense is to clench his fists tightly. Reynolds notices this and is amused when he puts his finger in his son's hand, thinking the squeeze is a sign of affection. When trying to move and squeeze the finger harder, Arthur ends up overdoing it and soils himself, making Alice have to clean him. He feels so embarrassed that he nearly cries. He wanted to believe it was just a strange dream, but he already understands that this is the reality he'll have to deal with from now on. Amid all this, something unexpected happens. Arthur witnesses his father using magic to increase his strength. Later, he also sees his mother using magic to heal him. This leaves him deeply intrigued, as in his previous life, he had never encountered anything like it. He wants to understand how magic works, but he knows he still needs to grow first. Shortly after, Reynolds enters a forest and defeats a beast with the help of magic. Then, he is visited by some friends who will play important roles later in the story. Meanwhile, Arthur, still unable to do much, watches everything around him, absorbing every detail. For him, knowledge has always been a powerful weapon, and now would be no different. When Reynolds returns from the hunt, Arthur wonders if he's now in a place where people live armed. If that's the case, this world is probably much more dangerous than it appears. He concludes that he needs to find a way to gain power as soon as possible if he wants to survive and adapt. He still has many questions he can't ask, but even so, he begins to find joy in the simple moments with his parents. In his old world, he couldn't even sleep peacefully. Someone was always trying to take his life. Now, living with safety and affection, he begins to get used to this new reality. Time passes, and after several days, or maybe weeks and months, Arthur learns to crawl. Soon he goes to a mirror to see what his face looks like. He gains more control over his body and starts sneaking out of the crib whenever his parents aren't around. His favorite destination is the library. There, he grabs a curious book to learn more about this world. He discovers that he's on the continent of Dicathen, divided into 3 great kingdoms: Darv, where the dwarves live; Elenoir, an elven kingdom hidden deep within the forest; and Sapin, land of the humans, where he is now. He learns that this world is also ruled by a monarchy, but unlike the previous one, where the throne could be taken by force, here power is inherited. With this basic information, Arthur tries to understand magic. He grabs a specific book on the subject, curious to know how everything works. As he reads it, he realizes how technologically superior his old reality was. The book explains that the magical energy of this world is called mana. Only 1 in 100 people is born with it, and this energy is passed down from generation to generation. There are 2 main ways to use it: augmentation, which enhances physical capabilities, and conjuring, which allows one to create and manipulate mania externally. With this, Arthur understands that his mother is a conjurer. He also discovers that each person born with mana possesses a magic core, normally accessed during puberty. By mastering this core, a person can become a mage. For Arthur, the concept resembles the Kai he used before. He even tries to activate it, but the moment he starts to concentrate, Alice picks him up, thinking he got dirty. And she was right. While she changes him, he feels trapped in such a fragile body and reaffirms to himself that one day he will become strong again. Later, Alice writes down details of her son's development and shows satisfaction with his progress. But there's something that worries her. Arthur still hasn't smiled at them. Just thinking about it makes her heart ache. Looking out the window, she sees Reynolds trying to teach Arthur the basics of swordplay. The father is excited about the progress, but Alice finds it not funny at all. She gets annoyed when she finds out he's teaching something so dangerous to such a young child. Arthur watches the argument closely, using the moment to try to better understand the relationship between men and women in this world. He even starts to wonder if here, women have more power. Later, Alice takes him to the market, and Arthur is enchanted by everything he sees. Each new item seems like an opportunity to learn. Now he understands why babies often look around so much. In particular, he's fascinated to see magic being used in public. On the way back home, he starts to doze off, but before that, he mentally thanks for being beside such special people. Arriving home, Alice comments on how happy she is when he escapes the crib to read, and how curious he is during market visits. She thinks this comes from Reynolds, and fears that, in the future, Arthur will want to go out into the world. Even so, she hopes he'll live a calmer life. At another moment, Arthur sees his father training magic and gets excited at the idea of being able to learn from him. Initially, he finds his father's display too simple, but when Alice appears and encourages him to pay more attention, Reynolds unleashes a much more impressive power. Arthur concludes that he is an augmenter. Excited, he wants to try something too, but is interrupted by Alice, who says it's already bedtime. When taken to the room, he sees a book on the shelf and starts crying, pointing to it. With a convincing little face, he manages to convince his mother to let him read a little longer. While reading, he starts trying to channel mana throughout his body and direct it to a single point, the beginning of the creation of a magic core. When the parents think he's already asleep, an explosion occurs inside the house. Reynolds instinctively protects Alice but ends up burned on the back. Once they make sure they're okay, they remember Arthur and run to where he was. Upon arriving, they're shocked. Arthur is floating, surrounded by intense energy. The two are paralyzed, just watching as their son slowly begins to descend. But when he lands, part of the ceiling collapses. Before something worse happens, the parents act quickly and save him. It was close. After that, everyone cries. Arthur, moved by the situation, realizes that Alice and Reynolds would do anything to protect him, something he never experienced in his previous life. The scene shifts to a moment from Arthur's past. In that previous life, he was remembered as the most powerful king of all. One of his servants was caught trying to take his life, and according to the laws of that time, the punishment would be immediate execution without any right to defense. However, the royal council decided to follow another path, to send the man back to his country of origin along with his entire family. They knew very well that the fate that awaited them there would be even worse than death. Desperate, the aggressor pleaded for compassion. He asked Gray to at least spare his wife and son, but Gray, without showing any sign of compassion or hesitation, killed both before the man's eyes. He did not do it out of revenge. In his mind, that was an act of mercy. It was clear proof of how relentless he could be. It is hard to believe that Arthur, that boy with a calm and gentle appearance, had once been someone capable of making such cold and ruthless decisions. Now, in the present, Arthur spends some time with his father, Reynolds, who decides to gift him a pair of combat gloves identical to his own. But Arthur refuses the gift. He still prefers to continue training with his wooden sword. In his opinion, with the body he currently has, the gloves would limit his movements too much and put him at a disadvantage. Reynolds does not insist on the matter of the gloves. He simply smiles and begins his own warm-up. But today's training would be different. During the combat, Arthur reveals that he has learned to reinforce his sword with mana. Surprising Reynolds, he disarms him for the first time. It was Arthur's first victory against his father, leaving Reynolds completely without reaction, impressed by his son's sudden progress. Later, during dinner, Reynolds announces that it is time to find a real instructor for Arthur. He recognizes that if he continues to be solely responsible for his training, he will end up limiting the boy's growth. Alice, Arthur's mother, does not agree. She knows that this means he would have to leave the house in the hills and go to the city, even though he is so young. But Reynolds insists. He explains that Arthur is already capable of enhancing any object with magic and states that this decision is necessary for his future. Dinner turns into a discussion. To resolve the situation, Arthur suggests that they both accompany him to the city. Thus, Reynolds can find the ideal tutor for his son, and Alice can remain by the boy's side. The proposal is accepted immediately. They begin packing their things to move. Shortly after, Reynolds' former companions, a group of adventurers known as the Twin Horns, appear to escort the family to the city. Arthur introduces himself to the group and talks with their leader, Adam. He mentions that they have seen each other before, although he thinks Arthur would not remember. But Arthur remembers perfectly. It was when the house exploded, and the group appeared to help rebuild everything. On that occasion, he discovered that his parents had already been part of the Twin Horns before settling in the hills. After that conversation, Angela arrives and hugs Arthur tightly, almost taking his breath away. Duran, the group's warrior, saves him by pulling him away. At that moment, Arthur notices a girl watching him from the top of the carriage. She is Jasmine, who merely stares at him without saying anything. Her gaze leaves him thoughtful. Shortly after, Helen approaches, shakes his hand, and introduces herself along with Jasmine. With everyone introduced, the journey to the city of Xyrus begins. During the trip, Arthur thinks about how that means of transport is outdated compared to his old world, where flying vehicles were common. Even so, he is not bothered. After all, he has his mother by his side throughout the journey. They make stops every day. At one of them, they are attacked by wild wolves. Arthur realizes for the first time how dangerous that world can be. Jasmine joins the fight using her daggers with impressive precision. Reynolds, Adam, and the others also join the battle and resolve everything quickly. Arthur, merely observing, feels inspired by them and begins to want to be part of that kind of adventure. That night, the group celebrates with a banquet. Arthur notices that his mother is not eating. She says that she is satisfied, but he feels that something is off. Then, she notices a wound on Reynolds' arm and gets up to heal it. The atmosphere changes. Everyone becomes alert, taking care that no one sees them. It becomes clear to Arthur that his mother's healing ability is something rare and very valuable in that world. He now understands why his parents lived in isolation, to keep Alice's power away from prying eyes. After dinner, Adam invites Arthur to a duel. He wants to see with his own eyes what Reynolds had told him about the boy's talent. The other members get excited and surround the two to watch. Arthur, at only 4 years old, wonders why no one seems worried about fighting a child. But he accepts the challenge. It is the first time he would face someone other than his own father. And Adam uses a real spear, albeit covered with bandages. As soon as the fight begins, Adam reinforces his weapon with mana. Arthur does the same, but goes even further. He channels mana into his feet to increase his speed. In an instant, he approaches Adam even before he can react. Then he outmaneuvers Adam and reappears behind him, surprising everyone with his speed and precision. The fight continues, but the physical difference between them is clear. Adam, with a single blow, sends him flying. Arthur feels on his skin how his body is still too light for direct combat. Before hitting the ground, Angela softens his fall with wind magic. Duran reprimands Adam for having gone too hard. Adam apologizes, saying that he was caught off guard by the boy's technique and couldn't contain his excitement. He wonders what kind of training Reynolds gave his son to make him so strong. Meanwhile, Jasmine watches Arthur intently. She wants to understand how he did that. She implores him to teach her. From her expression, Arthur realizes that she won't give up until she learns. The next morning, the group resumes the journey. At one stop, Adam starts teaching Arthur how to use the spear, while Reynolds has him train with strenuous exercises. Later, Helen teaches him to use the bow, and Arthur learns quickly. After that, he begins to train Jasmine, who also proves to be quite talented. That night, while Arthur reads a book, he notices that Jasmine continues to watch him as if trying to understand what makes him so special. The next day, it is Arthur's birthday. Jasmine gives him a dagger as a gift, and even begins to explain how to use it, leaving the other girls surprised. Tired of childish games, Adam announces that it is time to leave. But before that, Alice calls Arthur, and he notices that she is not feeling well. He asks what is happening, but she says that everything is fine, even though he feels that it is not quite so. During the journey, the group is attacked by bandits. Everyone jumps out of the carriage and takes their positions. Arrows come from all sides, but Angela protects the group with a magical barrier. Arthur realizes that they are surrounded. The leader of the bandits orders that no harm be done to women and children, as he wants to sell them. The battle begins. Alicia, scared, tries to calm Arthur down. Before they are reached, Duran pushes the enemies away with an explosion, and Reynolds knocks down 2 of them with his fists. One of the bandits tries to attack Reynolds from behind, but Helen stops him with a precise arrow. Adam moves among the enemies with his spear, and Jasmine takes down several with her daggers. Still, there are many enemies. The group begins to tire. Eventually, Reynolds is thrown against the carriage and becomes unconscious. The leader of the bandits approaches Alice and Arthur. When the 2 run from the carriage, Reynolds awakens and asks them to get away. Even though he is injured, he insists that Arthur flee with his mother. He reveals that Alice is pregnant, explaining why she seemed ill. Arthur hesitates but eventually accepts. He takes his mother by the arm and starts to run. The leader orders for him to be stopped, but the members of the group intervene, clearing a path for them to escape. As he runs, Arthur recalls his past life. He once was someone who took lives without hesitation, but now he was fighting to avoid losing someone important. While running, he feels a presence coming from the mountains. He sees a man about to cast magic against them. Without thinking twice, he pushes his mother to protect her and is hit, falling down the mountain. During the fall, he decides that he will not go alone. He uses the dagger that Jasmine gave him, which has a rope attached, and throws it at the enemy. It catches on the man's leg, dragging him along. Meanwhile, Duran and Angela try to use magic to save him, but he is too far away. Arthur begins to reflect on everything as he falls, and his mother, from above, screams his name in despair. Tears roll down her face. Arthur, on the other hand, feels that he has fulfilled his duty to protect his family, even at the cost of his own life. He is sad that he will not be able to meet the brother who was to come, but he feels that he did what was necessary. Incredibly, Arthur survives the fall, but when he opens his eyes, he is faced with a gigantic and terrifying monster. The image of the creature in front of Arthur completely paralyzes him. He can't utter a single word. It feels like he was lured there on purpose, and with that, he tries to attack her. But her reaction is simple and unexpected. With a light touch, she pushes him away as if he were nothing. She assures him she poses no danger and calmly gets up, walking toward an unusual plant she cultivated by herself to pick magical fruits. Her intention is to feed Arthur, assuming he needs to recover as he is still injured. Her attitude leaves Arthur disoriented. It's hard to believe that a creature with such a threatening appearance is treating him with such care, almost like a maternal figure. Even so, he can't fully trust her. Something inside him suspects her intentions. But since he's in pain and can't even move, he gives in to emotion and starts crying. The creature promises Arthur she will answer everything he wants to know. So he asks his first question. He wants to know if his parents are okay. She responds that, although she cannot leave the cave, she used her spatial awareness to confirm that his family defeated all the bandits and left that place a few days ago. Arthur feels great relief knowing that his mother, father, and future sister are safe. He sincerely thanks her for saving his life. Not knowing how to address her, she finally introduces herself as Sylvia. But it's clear that Sylvia holds many secrets. In the following days, she continues caring for Arthur, offering him the same magical fruits which help his body fully recover. Over time, Arthur is able to walk again and feels the desire to return home. However, according to Sylvia, the region is still very dangerous, full of ferocious creatures and thieves, and he wouldn't last a single day on his own. Even so, Sylvia doesn't want to see him trapped there. She decides to find a way to help him leave, using the little magic still left in her body to open a dimensional rift. Meanwhile, Arthur spends his time training his sword skills, but he can't stop thinking about the mysteries surrounding Sylvia. Why is she being so protective of him? And what does that huge hole in her chest mean? Since she never talks about herself, these questions remain unanswered. After training, Arthur meditates to strengthen his mana, which catches Sylvia's attention. Curious, she decides to show him something even more interesting, a way to absorb mana from the environment while casting spells at the same time. She explains that the way people perceive mana, as something that needs to be gathered before being used, is limited. She says that beings like her can use and collect mana simultaneously, which prevents exhaustion. Sylvia also mentions that magical creatures can do this instinctively, as if it were breathing. Then she asks Arthur if he wants to learn this technique. He responds enthusiastically, saying yes, but before teaching him, she wants to know why. Arthur answers honestly. He wants this power to become stronger and, with it, destroy anyone who harms the ones he loves. The answer displeases Sylvia. She touches his forehead, saying he has failed. She refuses to teach something so valuable to someone consumed by hatred. Arthur argues that it's normal to feel anger toward enemies, especially after everything he went through in his past life as a king. Sylvia senses that darkness inside him and explains that causing pain to others cannot be the goal. After a pause, she apologizes for being harsh, but reminds him that the same hands capable of ending him were also the ones that touched him with tenderness. That is the lesson she wants to leave. It's better to act with kindness. Anger and violence only bring suffering. She saved his life with care and affection, and she doesn't want that gesture to be stained by negative feelings. When Arthur starts to understand what she's trying to convey, she asks him again, what will he do when he becomes powerful? Arthur, thinking of all the good moments he lived with his parents and friends, replies that he will use his strength to protect them. This time Sylvia smiles and approves. But elsewhere, nearby, atop a cliff, a different figure appears, someone who looks a lot like Sylvia. He is searching for her, as she disappeared from the kingdom where she lived. Then, we are taken to a moment from Arthur's past life. He is in his royal chambers. After waking up, he goes to the office of a parliament member. There, he admits that he only carries the title of king, since the real rulers are the parliament. In a world on the brink of collapse, with few resources and declining birth rates, Arthur believes his role is only to be a living weapon. The subordinate tries to comfort him with compliments, but Arthur leaves. Shortly after, he is mysteriously assassinated. When he tries to use the new power he received from Sylvia, memories of his previous life return. He remembers how he struggled to release the power of Kai. And now, with the new power, he feels completely overtaken by it. Once again, the question arises, what will he do with this strength? Suddenly, Sylvia pushes him against a rock. He doesn't understand what's happening. She, who protected him until now, is now hiding him. She asks him to stay there, safe, without fear. Inside the rock, Arthur feels immense energy. Another creature appears, with the same appearance as Sylvia. He found her thanks to the smell of blood. He demands she return with him. Sylvia refuses and is ready to fight to the end. When the battle begins, she reveals her true form. She is a powerful dragon. The creature warns her that this kind of power could end her life. But Sylvia is at peace with that fate. For her, every moment lived was worth it. Even if it means dying, she won't back down. The battle is intense. Arthur watches, helpless. The fight seems balanced until Sylvia uses her final move. She freezes everything around, traps the opponent, and opens the cave's entrance for Arthur to escape. When he leaves, he sees who she really is, a majestic dragon, and she tells him it's time to go. She says the power she gave him is for him to find his way back. She reinforces her hope that he will not be guided by anger. Arthur says he will use the power to protect those he loves. She smiles. She doesn't want him to follow a path of hatred. She wants him to share love with the world. Her words touch Arthur. Before leaving, she gives him a dragon egg and a feather, asking him to wrap the egg with it. As he touches it, immense energy flows through his body. Glowing lines appear on his arm, tearing his shirt. Sylvia admits she could have sent him away earlier. She knew how, but she liked his company. Having someone to talk to after so long was special. Arthur feels the same. He learned a lot from her. The farewell is painful. Arthur, in tears, feels like he failed for not being able to protect her. He remembers everything she taught him. Despite everything, she smiles. For her, her life had meaning. With a sincere smile, he says it doesn't matter what she is, dragon or monster. She is family. She smiles and jokes, saying he already has a mother. And he replies with something that deeply moves her. Then you are my grandmother. That word touches her in a special way. She cries. She asks him to say it again. He repeats it. Arthur holds the egg and the feather. The sky darkens. It's time to go. He doesn't want to leave her. He asks her to come with him. But there is no response. The opening disappears. Sylvia releases the seal and the opponent regains strength. She falls to the ground, motionless. He approaches, surprised that she's so weak. But it was all part of the plan. Sylvia opens her eyes and releases a mana explosion so intense that no one could survive. The entire cave trembles. The energy reaches the surface. Outside, Arthur continues on his path, still crying. Her voice echoes in the skies, asking him to remember the conversations they had. She understands he is sad, but asks that, even so, he tries to smile. Revenge must not guide his steps. And if it's hard, then he should move slowly, one step at a time. Arthur doubts himself, but she reminds him who he is. Gray, the most powerful king. He can do anything, and he must not use that power to carry pain. He must choose happiness. Arthur is speechless. She always knew who he really was. The moment is full of emotion. Her voice fades with the wind. Then, Arthur stores her egg in his backpack and prepares for his new journey. So, increasing the speed of his movements using mana, Arthur advanced through the Elsha forest, careful not to damage Sylvia's egg that he was carrying. Jumping from branch to branch as if he were Tarzan himself, he suddenly picked up the sound of human voices. Without hesitation, he approached, hoping he might be able to follow that group to the city where his family awaited him. However, as soon as he landed on a tree above them, he realized the situation was quite different from what he had imagined. Down below were 4 bandits, and they had kidnapped a young elf girl to sell her as a slave. Arthur immediately remembered a similar group he had faced days ago, men who had tried to capture him along with his mother. No doubt, these must be part of the same organization. A desire for justice ignited in his chest. Meanwhile, the kidnappers were pushing the elf girl into the cart and getting ready to leave. The scene revolted Arthur. Still, he forced himself to remember Sylvia's words and held back his fury, choosing to follow the cart stealthily until sunset. When the group stopped to camp, Arthur realized he had 2 options. He could keep following them safely until they reached a human city, but that would mean abandoning the elf girl to her fate. He knew he couldn't ignore it. He waited until midnight to act. The bandits were using horned wolves to pull the cart, and Arthur came up with a plan to destabilize the camp. He started throwing rocks at the animals, making them howl loudly and threateningly. Scared by the idea that the howls might attract dangerous predators, one of the bandits approached the wolves and started kicking them to try to silence them. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Arthur crept up to him. Reinforcing his hand with mana, he turned it into a living blade and quickly incapacitated the man. Then, he took the bandit's knife and eliminated the second kidnapper without hesitation. The third noticed something was wrong and tried to react, but Arthur was faster and struck his leg. In desperation, the man warned the group's leader about the attack. The leader, however, was not worried. To him, Arthur seemed like just another valuable piece of merchandise. Determined to capture him alive, he dropped his sword, reinforced his hands with mana, and moved in for hand-to-hand combat. Arthur dodged the first blow and tried to use his thread technique to hit the leader like he had in a previous fight. But the leader, more experienced in battle, saw through the trick and landed a powerful kick on Arthur, throwing him far away. Without giving him time to react, he grabbed the boy's leg, convinced it was the end. But for Arthur, it had barely begun. Using a fire spell, he burned the opponent's leg, making the bandit roar in rage. Now, the leader shouted that he would only sell the corpse of the annoying child to some sick collectors. While he gave in to his own hatred, Arthur took the chance to throw his knife using the thread technique, planting it right in the enemy's forehead and ending the fight in an instant. The third bandit, still alive, fell to his knees, begging for mercy and promising to change his ways. But Arthur knew those empty words all too well. He couldn't afford to leave witnesses, so he finished the job. Climbing into the cart, Arthur removed the blindfold from the elf girl's eyes and tried to calm her, assuring her that she was safe now. Even so, she was scared upon seeing his injured state. Understanding that children don't handle violence well, Arthur quickly covered the bandits' bodies and told a small lie. He said the bad men had died in an accident. Innocent, the girl believed him without question. After grabbing some useful supplies, Arthur was preparing to leave, but was stopped when the little elf held his hand, begging not to be left alone in that forest full of dangers. She said her parents had told her stories about tree ghosts that ate children, even if they were just legends to scare the young. With no other choice, Arthur decided to take her back home. The girl pointed south, saying her home was in that direction, the opposite way from where Arthur needed to go to reunite with his parents. When he asked how she ended up in that situation, the answer was simple. While playing, she followed some bugs and ended up getting lost. He wasn't surprised. He remembered his past life, recalling when he had also been imprisoned at the same age. He wouldn't allow her to go through something similar. As for the horned wolves, the girl asked to release them, explaining they would die if kept tied up. Though Arthur was reluctant, afraid they'd be attacked once freed, he simply watched as she untied their ropes and allowed the animals to return to the forest. Happy to have saved such a kind soul, Arthur renewed his resolve to protect her. The next day, they began their walk. At some point, Arthur asked her name, and the little elf replied with a smile, "Tessia." When she asked his name, he responded politely. As they walked, Arthur noticed she was probably hungry, so he had her sit down and gave her a bowl of food. Even without appetite, he explained it was important to eat to maintain strength. Memories of Sylvia came to mind. She used to say exactly that. Tessia wrinkled her nose, saying the food smelled weird. Arthur laughed internally. After everything they'd been through, she was still complaining? Typical kid. He tried to improve the taste by adding some leaves, but even then she made a face. To Arthur, food meant survival, not flavor. Watching the girl complain made him better understand what it means to be a child. She said she wanted something sweet, but under those circumstances, it was impossible. And so, they continued on their journey. Along the way, Tessia said her city was full of mana, and that she couldn't wait to awaken her own energy and study with her master. Arthur was surprised that she would have a mentor instead of attending a school system. Night fell, and he set up a tent for Tessia to rest. He heard the howls of the wolves he had freed and, worried, regretted not having killed them. Tessia called him into the tent, saying it was dangerous to stay outside, but Arthur preferred to keep watch. The girl insisted, saying her grandfather had taught her not to sleep in the same space as a boy, but she would make an exception that time and promised not to tell anyone. When Arthur still hesitated, she argued that if he stayed outside, people would see they were kids and they'd be more likely to be attacked. Tired, Arthur gave in and went inside. Inside the tent, Tessia talked about humans, saying they were perverted and had many wives. Arthur tried to explain that not all were like that, but she was already asleep. Soon after, he also fell asleep. The next day, they resumed the journey. Arthur suddenly felt an unbearable pain coming from his mana core, but said he was fine, so Tessia wouldn't worry. Even when she asked, he said he was fine. One of the horned wolves Tessia had saved brought a small catch as a gesture of gratitude for what they had done, and that night they ate delicious meat. The next day, Tessia asked to call him Artie. In response, he jokingly called her Your Highness, which annoyed her. She just wanted to feel closer, and Arthur, unaccustomed to friendships, was still learning how to deal with that. Further ahead, Tessia found a passage and called Arthur. Not really understanding, he held her hand and crossed to the other side. When he fell to the ground, exhausted, he was surprised. Soldiers appeared around them, pointing weapons at him. They said they had tracked the two of them there because they had used a teleportation portal. Before Arthur could react, he was restrained. Desperate, he called out to Tessia, only to see her standing there, unresponsive and expressionless. The guards look at Arthur with suspicion and demand to know who gave permission for a human to enter that sacred place. Not knowing what to say, Arthur turns his face toward Tessia, hoping she'll say something to get him out of that situation. But since she doesn't say anything, he feels a stab of disappointment. He thought he could trust her, even considered Tessia a friend. But now it seemed he was wrong. What he didn't know is that she was just frozen, not knowing how to act. She was just a child, scared under pressure. When the guards say they're going to take Arthur down, Tessia finally gathers courage and intervenes, saying he saved her life. Even so, the guards don't believe it. They claim Arthur must have done something to manipulate her mind and convince her of that. But before the situation gets worse, someone appears through the same magic portal. A man with an imposing yet calm appearance shows up and orders them to leave Arthur alone. It's Virion Erelith, the former king of Elenoir. He personally thanks Arthur for saving his granddaughter and reveals that Tessia is the kingdom's princess. Arthur is completely surprised. He never would have imagined Tessia was royalty. She had never acted in a way that gave that away during the time they spent together. Soon after, Tessia's parents, King Alduin and Queen Merial, arrive, relieved to see their daughter again after so many days of worry. While Merial checks to see if her daughter is okay, Alduin addresses Arthur, visibly uncomfortable, and asks what a human is doing there. Without thinking twice, he orders the soldiers to get rid of Arthur. Virion once again steps into the situation and says he was the one who told the guards to back off. Calmly, he explains that Arthur saved their granddaughter, even being a human, and that should be taken into consideration. Tessia supports what Virion said, begging her father not to hurt Arthur, and she suggests inviting him to the castle. The idea of a human crossing the castle gates clearly makes Alduin hesitate, but Tessia leaves her father no choice, and he eventually agrees. Then she runs to Arthur and says that if he goes with her, she'll share her favorite sweets with him. Meanwhile, Virion is intrigued by the power he senses in Arthur, and he says he needs to talk to him privately later. Arthur then follows Tessia, exploring the kingdom of Elenoir. The city is full of beauty, with buildings spread among the trees and beneath them. People live peacefully, away from conflict. But even so, everyone looks at Arthur curiously, wondering what a human is doing there. Despite everything, Arthur still can't forget the moment Tessia hesitated to help him. Why did she do that? And that serious expression on her face? These thoughts keep echoing in his mind, bringing a discomfort that's hard to ignore. He keeps observing everything around him cautiously, without letting his guard down. When they arrive at the castle, they are greeted by several elven maids. They exist to take care of everything Tessia needs, but today, Tessia wants to repay Arthur. She orders them to treat Arthur with the best possible hospitality and tells everyone he saved her life. When she notices that some maids still aren't fully convinced, Tessia declares that Arthur is one of the rare humans with a kind heart. Then she turns to Arthur and asks what he wants to do. Eat, play, have lunch, or maybe freshen up. But Arthur has another priority. Before anything else, he wants to talk to Tessia's parents about what happened in the forest. There's still a lot that remains unexplained. Everyone gathers in a room meant for serious conversations, but Tessia seems to be in a different mood and shows up bringing tea and snacks, as if it were a relaxing meeting. Alduin introduces himself to Arthur more formally, along with Merial and Virion. Arthur also introduces himself, saying he's just an ordinary child from a distant village in the kingdom of Sapin. He kneels respectfully, saying he never imagined a commoner like him would have the chance to be in the presence of royalty, much less sit in the same room. Alduin is surprised by the boy's manners and allows him to continue. Arthur then tells everything that happened since he got separated from his family. He doesn't lie, but also doesn't reveal everything, like his encounter with the mysterious Sylvia. When he reaches the part where he finds Tessia being taken by slave traffickers, the mood in the room changes. Alduin, as always, takes the opportunity to blame humanity, saying they're all savages. But Virion asks the question that really matters. How did a 5-year-old boy manage to defeat 3 adult slave traffickers? It certainly wasn't through talking. Arthur finally reveals that he's a mage and used his powers to save her. Alduin doesn't believe it, and the same guard from before interrupts again, saying this is all mind manipulation. Virion, who's been defending Arthur from the start, gets irritated with the disrespect and silences him. Tessia also speaks, saying she heard the traffickers saying they were going to sell her, recalling the horrible experience. Merial, moved, hugs her daughter tightly. Alduin finally realizes what his daughter went through. Then he turns to Arthur and says he believes him, thanking him for everything he did. Arthur takes the chance to explain why he asked for that meeting. He's separated from his family, and all he wants is to reunite with them in Sapin. Alduin is shocked. A human asking for help from elves? He replies that he would never help humans and that Arthur needs to find his way back alone. But Arthur is clever. He says that if they're not capable of repaying the favor he did, then they have no right to call humans savages because they'd be acting the same way. Virion calmly says Arthur got him with that. He agrees with Arthur and says his son fell into his own trap. Tessia also waits for her father's answer. With no way out, Alduin agrees. He tells Arthur there's a portal that leads to Sapin, but it can only be used once every 7 years. Since it was used recently, it won't be able to open again for 5 years. Arthur can't wait that long. He needs to see his parents soon. Alduin realizes this and says he'll send soldiers to escort him home. The journey will begin the next day. This brings relief to Arthur, but his mana core starts hurting again. He leaves the room and tries to relax with a bath. The pain doesn't go away. He clutches his chest, trying to understand what's happening and what he could do. He thinks of Sylvia, wondering what she would do in this situation. Then he decides to take a walk around the palace. The fresh air helps a bit with the pain. He thinks of his parents and feels an immense longing. He wonders if they're still alive, but soon concludes they're too strong not to be. When he looks up and sees Tessia with her parents, he wonders if his family will also receive him with such affection, or if they'll be angry for him being gone so long. These thoughts weigh heavily on a boy like him. Tessia runs up to him. Arthur teases her, calling her a spoiled princess and saying she should go enjoy time with her parents. But he opens up to her, saying he's afraid of how his parents will react. Tessia holds his face, amazed at how someone can be so silly. What kind of parents wouldn't be happy to see their son again? She's sure his parents are very worried. Suddenly, glowing flowers begin to fall from the sky. She smiles and explains what they are. Arthur watches and remembers the moment he thought she would betray him, realizing he only thought that because he's still ruled by the darkness inside him due to his past. Then he apologizes to Tessia and says he liked the flowers too. Arthur senses something dangerous coming toward Tessia and immediately counterattacks. To his shock, the one who launched the attack was Virion. Arthur asks why Virion is attacking his own granddaughter. But he just smiles, saying no one could get hurt by flowers. Arthur realizes he had done it to test him, and it worked. Now Virion believes he really took down the bandits. Tessia runs up, begging him not to hurt Arthur, but Virion replies that he's not intimidating anyone. He just found someone interesting for the first time and doesn't intend to let him go. Using magic, he makes Tessia sit and throws a wooden sword to Arthur. The boy immediately understands Virion's intention, and the fight begins. Arthur gives it his all, uses all his mana, but can't hit Virion, who is faster. When he tries a stronger attack, the sword breaks and a piece almost hits Tessia. But Arthur protects her. He decides to use magic. The power is immense, few would withstand it. But Virion repels the spell like it's nothing. After several attempts, Arthur finally hits Virion on the head. He's surprised, but instead of backing off, gets more excited to keep fighting. But Tessia gets up and pinches her grandfather, asking him to leave Art alone. Virion says Arthur isn't the child everyone thinks he is, and if anyone was intimidated, it was him. Arthur doesn't want that kind of fame. He says Virion is exaggerating, but then Virion makes a proposal. He wants Arthur to become his disciple. The idea doesn't seem bad, and Arthur starts to consider it. But remembering his parents and their worry, he thinks it's better to refuse. He explains everything to Virion, who then says there's a way to let his parents know he's safe without going personally. Arthur tries to understand better, but the pain returns to his mana core. This confirms Virion's suspicion. Arthur inherited a beast will. The only way to survive this is by becoming his disciple, and that's how the 5th episode of the anime, The Beginning After the End. If you want the continuation of the next episodes, leave it in the comments. See you next time.